Good morning, everybody. This is Mina Malapeti with the Seamless Connection, and I'm looking forward to having a lovely morning chat with Joe DeVivo, former CEO of InTouch and head of hospitals and health systems at Teladoc Health. Joe, good morning. Pleasure to see you today.
Good morning, Mina. It's nice to see you as well.
Just as a quick background for those in our audience that might not be familiar with you, could you mind giving them a little bit of your background and what you've been doing for the last few years?
Absolutely. I've been very blessed to be on the medical journey. I've been in the medical device industry for the first 26 years of my healthcare experience, and started off my first five in a small family business. Um, but then the last 6 or 7 years, I've been blessed to be a part of this new digital virtual wave and excitement, and lucky enough to be involved with the great team at InTouch since 2016, and had the ability to see some of the provider to provider telehealth flourish. I'm very much entrenched in digital today. We did sell InTouch to Teladoc. I stayed for a couple of years to make sure there was a good transition, and now I'm taking some time off. And I would I've told people I'm going to retire, and I feel that I'm still retired, but I get twinges every once in a while. Excuse me, to go do something. So you never know.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and I'm very jealous. Looking forward. Your experiences are amazing. At AmplifyMD, we're kind of in the same area, but would love to kind of understand what drew you to that space, right? You were at AngioDynamics, and way back when in my previous finance life, that was one of the companies that I followed and invested in. So I've kind of followed your career from then, but wanted to understand kind of what brought you from that side, more of the med tech devices side of things, to virtual healthcare, and what drew you into this.
Well, thank you. It's a great question. My very early in my career, when I was at U.S. Surgical, I was fascinated with robotics. At Surgical, we had all kinds of devices, graspers, energy devices, stapling devices, and I was always fascinated. This was, late 80s, early 90s. No, I'm sorry. This is late 90s. I apologize. But I was fascinated with robotics and surgical robotics, and I got to meet probably one of the most incredible human beings I've gotten to know, Dr. Yulin Wang. And he founded Computer Motion, which was the first surgical robotics company. And I moved my family to Santa Barbara and worked with him, and we ultimately led a merger and sale of Computer Motion to Intuitive. So on that experience, I then went on for the rest of my career, and Yulin went back with his tremendous vision, because there was one operation that really informed his thought process, and that was in 2001. He pioneered something called the Lindbergh procedure, where he broke the robot in two. He was always fascinated that when you had a surgical robot, you have a physician who's in the room, but they're not sterile, and they're manipulating devices, and the signal of those devices travel 20 feet to the table. And he always said to himself, well, if a surgeon can transmute their capabilities over 20 feet worth of cable, can they do it over 4,000 miles? And so he brought a French surgeon to New York City, who then took the gallbladder out of his patient in France in 2001. So talk about distance, virtual, bringing specialty care far away. I mean, you don't get more complex than taking a gallbladder out of a patient from 4,000 miles away. So his second company was in robotics, but also in telemedicine. And he was focused, as you're focused, on the ability of bringing a specialist to everywhere that is needed. And because I worked with him in the first company, and we were so successful, and I absolutely loved the man. I actually relocated my family again back to Santa Barbara for his second company, and it was a complete joy. I don't know. I can't say that I was such an incredible visionary that I saw these trends and jumped into it. But boy, when Yulin told me what he was doing, I believed, and I believed enough to move my family and make the commitment.
That's amazing. And speaking as a native Californian, I am excited that we got you back twice and sad that we couldn't keep you here forever. But it's really refreshing to hear that it was the people and the connections that you made with Dr. Wang and with kind of what you guys had done before that kind of brought you to your progressive next steps. Because a lot of people will try and say, yeah, I could see this coming 10 years out. I'm like, sometimes sure, but it's usually something else that's more personal, that's a deeper connection. So
Well, when
I
he
hadn't
explained
realized.
it to me, I'll tell you, when he explained it to me, I got it and saw it. But before that, it was like a truck that hit me. I had no idea, and
Mhm.
just happy to have met him.
So when you were at InTouch, and I know a lot of work that you've done recently, and a lot of the writing you've done recently has been about patient safety and obviously doing surgeries remotely or from our point of view, taking care of patients from a specialty perspective, rounding on them from cardiology, hematology, high touch, high risk areas. Patient safety from a virtual perspective is very different and just as important from an in-person perspective. How's your time at InTouch and Teladoc shaped how you see? I'm sure there was wins and I'm sure there were losses, right? And things you learned. What have you kind of considered your biggest lessons there, both ways?
Well, I'd almost rephrase the question, because it was not my time at InTouch or Teladoc that taught me patient safety. It was my time in the medical device industry.
Oh,
We are a highly regulated industry. We have to make sure that what we manufacture is exactly what we say we manufacture. We have to prove our product works well in advance of it ever getting to a patient. We have to watch what we say to those who use our product, and there's a huge process in place. And then we could do all that well and never get paid. So there's
hmm,
so much to understand, and over time, when you're in those positions, you just want to get the fastest FDA clearance, and you want to get through this and get through that and get the reimbursement. But when you step back, you realize that these checks and balances are incredibly healthy for patient safety. Because if patients are going to make a decision, um, you better make sure that whatever you tell them is correct. And so I came into digital with that discipline. Not a lot of people who are coming into digital and virtual, have had the ability to have that kind of appreciation. And sometimes people don't realize that things that they say have consequences. Oh, this will heal you, or you will do better with this, or whatnot. And obviously, you're here on pharma. I mean, how regulated their communications are and all the advertising they do. So, patient safety for me is everything. I love being in this industry because you can grow your career, make money for your family, develop your talents. Oh, and by the way, you've helped somebody, you've improved their life,
yes,
and that just
yeah,
is such a motivator. And the converse is true. You
yeah,
hurt someone, oh my God,
yeah.
So
Mhm.
I have tremendous respect for the regulatory environment. I actually led AdvaMed's efforts. I was a chairman of the Digital Center for AdvaMed. AdvaMed is the Medical Device Trade Association. And I led digital health because I absolutely believed that a brick and mortar medical company needs to have a digital strategy. And if they don't have a digital strategy, they will be responding to someone else's. But then also a digital company like the Apples, the Microsofts, the Googles, or any software company who has an application coming into healthcare. We have to understand that line between when does in healthcare IT, when does IT end and actually healthcare begin, and where is their consequence? And when we were and at InTouch, when we were diagnosing stroke from afar, and especially earlier in the day when the internet wasn't as stable, we had to build this whole networking infrastructure because we felt that if someone was relying on a remote physician to make an urgent diagnosis where their time is their life, this better not fail. And so we
Yeah.
treated the digital environment as if it was a regulated medical device, and I think that served us well.
No, and that's exactly right. What's the saying? What time is brain, right? You got
That's
that
right.
30-second response,
Uh,
2 minutes, it can make a huge difference.
Time is brain. And
Um,
imagine a dropped call while a doctor is looking at a stroke patient, or the image is fuzzy, or something happens and those minutes go by. If anything ever happened with our technology and there was any issue, I mean, it was devastating to us. So,
yeah.
and I think that's the honor and privilege of being in healthcare.
Yeah, and I completely agree with where you're going. We do both the clinical side as well as the tech side. So we've had, you have the credentialing time frame, the 30, 60, 90, God knows what long days to get your physicians approved. Then you also have the IT review. So
Mhm.
from the flip side of it, how do you think about it from having worked with hospitals for so long and from the enterprise perspective for so long? One of the challenges in working with a health system is no one ever got fired for hiring IBM, right? It's easy to go with that safe choice. It's easy to do what's always been done, but then that kind of blocks progress, blocks the innovations that you've been working towards for these last decades. How did you kind of fight that battle at the same time respecting the importance of I need to follow these check marks, these rules, these checks and balances, as you said so well, to make sure that we're doing it safely, but at the same time we're continuing to make progress forward on things that maybe, as we've seen in the last couple of years, have never been done before.
Well, it's a great question, and our intention was that we were IBM. That IBM knew nothing about our space, but we were going to be experts in our space, and I think that's what's so special about what Dr. Wong did and the InTouch team is when they started, they had just sold computer motion for a big price tag to Intuitive Surgical, and when they went out, they were making a robot, and the robot was supposed to round from patient room to patient room. And when after the first 3 or 4 years of the company, and they said, okay, we've done all the hardware development, now we're going to do our beta testing. They couldn't connect to the robot. There's no cellular network out there that you could just that you can just get into in 2003, 2004, and 5. They had to ride the Wi-Fi of the hospital, which meant they were going through ISDN lines at times and using VPNs. And they said to themselves, wow, we can't do medical procedures, through an ISDN line with a VPN that's very unstable. And so they paused other development, and they actually created a network. They built data centers all around the world, and they had their code only running in a secure private cloud. So they were able to control the traffic. They knew the bandwidth on your side. They knew the bandwidth on their side. They knew the track through the hospital. And they built an ADT type of service center that would look at the connections, and they built special code that would speak to the devices. So they knew the devices were online. Just like, if someone's house alarm goes off, the police station calls. Well, our technical assistance center, if they didn't see a device that was hooked up to our network, if it went offline, they'd call the hospital immediately as if it was a 3-alarm fire. And the hospital, like, what are you talking about? And then they would realize that their network went down, and we'd be the ones that would tell them. And the only reason why we did that networking was because Yulin had the integrity to say, this is a medical procedure. We're not going to rely on, we're going to take ownership of every single step of that experience. And we're not going to allow it to fail. And I think that's where that integrity comes from, instead of saying, oh, well, it would have been good if your network was better. Healthcare systems don't like that.
Yeah, no, definitely not. What have you found most challenging working with hospital systems in the last few years,
You
especially as
know,
things changed with COVID?
when I look at when I look at the markets that we're serving, especially in telehealth, we're a cost to the hospital, and we're in a cost center, in an IT budget cost center. So, and so at the end of the day, that IT budget's cost center, we're not a reimbursed procedure where we are cost of goods, where the more procedures you do, the more money you make. Our business was, a cost to the hospital, and we had to work on business models that became more and more profitable for them. But to the extent that they looked at us as a cost, and then they see how much they're paying for their EMR, they're saying, well, gosh, can't my EMR do this? And EMR is a record in tool. It's not a clinical engagement tool. I think that's what the biggest challenge was. I'd like to see in the future, as reimbursement firms up, the ability of having a more that we're a part of the procedural costs and the operating costs, and not the IT costs of the hospital. And so it's a whole different buying cycle, and I think that's a challenge.
Were you able to ever have that conversation with them instead of them seeing telehealth as a cost center? Because I've obviously had very similar conversations. as more of a way to bring in patients and reach patients they otherwise weren't reaching, or keep patients that they were otherwise losing through transfers or patient leakage?
100%. And I think that was really the pitch before COVID, because people were not, they didn't have the awareness of what the capability was. And then we had COVID come in, and telehealth was virtually the sustainability of everyone's practices. So what happened was everyone built an awareness and realized that there was capabilities. But I also think those that were forced into telemedicine during COVID have kind of shunned it now. And they shun it now just because, you know, it makes no sense for me to do a video visit if I could just go down the street and see somebody, unless there's a real major scheduling issue. And that was really where, through COVID, 80% of the new volume came was, not really appropriate telehealth use cases that make the health system profitable. So, so we're actually, the whole industry is sitting in this kind of, no man's land right now, because we don't have permanent reimbursement. We are part of a health emergency. That health emergency is waning now, and we're all lobbying very hard, but we don't have a clear path to where it's permanent. I think where we've been successful is we have to show, we have to get out of the ether of telehealth and get into the individual use case and show how by using this, you can, like in doing subspecialty care, especially like you do, excuse me, we were able to show hospitals how they can increase their catchment area, how they can attract patients from a larger area. And early on, people using our capabilities, patients were driving by competitive hospitals to get to the telehealth hospital. So it is absolutely, but it can't be just sold to the hospital. Oh, this is going to grow your population. You actually have to peel it into the use case and into the specificity of how it'll do that. But we even have some of the greatest success in value-based organizations, those who really have kind of a fixed set of revenue and costs that they need to contain, and it's all about creating the right financial model for them.
Yep, completely agree, especially with the flexibility that telehealth gives you, and the way that you can reach the patient kind of wherever they are, meet them where they need to be. We've seen a lot of impacts from that similarly.
It's a
And
great
looking back at your
equalizer.
time,
It's so important to be able to deliver subspecialty care to rural sites.
yeah,
It's the whole promise of why digital can be a solution, is help somebody who's not getting subspecialty cardiology care, neurology care, nephrology care. There's what we did learn through COVID was a lot of what we do can be done virtually. Not everything. It's not a replacement. It's
yep,
an amplifier.
yep. Exactly. And that's one of the things that we talk about a lot internally is health equity, right? Just like we talk about with schools, like the quality of your education shouldn't matter based on your zip code. Healthcare, same thing. The quality of your health outcomes, what you have access to really shouldn't depend. And there will always be cases that need to be transferred, but what we found is about 80 to 85%, can be done virtually with
Yep,
if that hospital is willing to take that step. So
that's right.
I'm excited to see where the future goes. For you, when you left, I think it was just a few months ago, so it's still very fresh in your mind. When you left, what did you think of as your most proud achievement? What were you so excited to have left your mark on when you were leaving Teladoc earlier this year? Whether
Well,
it was at Teladoc or just over your time.
I mean, first of all, I'm proud of the team at InTouch, and I really am. And a lot of leaders would say that, and people go, yeah, it's a nice thing to say. My people there know I mean it. We really tried to do things right. We took care of our own in the tough times. We put the patients and the hospitals always first. We built a great reputation, and I wanted to stay at Teladoc because I really loved my team. And when you go through, I've been through many acquisitions. I've bought companies and I've been bought, and I understand the lack of stability for it. And Teladoc made another acquisition right after us, and everyone and the leadership left day one. And I thought that was a horrible, horrible thing for the business. So I wanted to stay, and I wanted to stay in the company and make sure that the company understood the quality of my team. I didn't want anyone, and then also my team can show their wares and stay together, because I truly believe Teladoc was a great amplifier for our business. Where we can come up with all these use cases, but at the end of the day, when this becomes mature, we're probably never going to talk about telehealth again, because it should be just health, and it should be a use case that is just obvious. If you can't have a subspecialist in a rural area, you're gonna do a virtual, and they're gonna have coverage, and that's just the way it is. So let's not talk about it. Let's just do it. Or people are gonna have 24/7 care, or we're gonna be able to manage chronic diseases, and we're gonna be able to take these people, and we shouldn't be talking about telehealth. It should just be done. It should be paid for, and it should just be done. But I'm most proud of all the people that were on the journey, and the energy we created, the trust we created, and the results we produced.
That's great. And then as you're looking forward, what are you most excited about for yourself? I know you said earlier we were talking, you're still kind of figuring out what you want to do, if you're really fully retiring or not. Can you give us a peek into your thoughts there?
Well, I've really enjoyed helping some small companies on their boards recently. And so I've kind of poured myself more into that. I still do my charity work, and that really motivates me. I haven't been too energized by, a bunch of the, go and fix this, come in as a new CEO someplace. I've done that so many times, but I will say I have an idea I'm working on that I'm pretty inspired by, and if I could figure out how to get this to lift off, it'd be the next new digital healthcare company. And so I'm playing with that right now. I've never started a company before, so I'm thinking about doing that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Is that a kind of 2023 thing or
Oh,
a
it's
little bit later?
Project X. I can't tell you what it is yet. So
Stealth mode, that's lovely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your morning with me. I really have appreciated this time and the chance to get to know you and everything you've done with InTouch, with Teladoc, with just healthcare in general for the last few decades. So I appreciate you sharing your wealth of knowledge.
thank you. It's been a pleasure to be with you, Mina.